A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Dear ladies, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our second health webinar. I am pleased to welcome our presenter for this session, Ms. Salma Sultana Khan. Salma is a nutrition consultant and a health writer, and she practices from various locations around London. Salma is going to present a webinar on how to boost your immune system with nutrition, including what to eat and what not to eat during Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah for the introduction. I hope that you'll all find this webinar informative and useful. If anyone has any questions, then just type the questions into the question and answer session during the presentation, and then they'll be read out at the end. I'll do my best to answer all of your questions. Also, you might want to take some notes while I talk, so get your pens ready. I'll just run through a few points that I'll be covering today. Firstly, I'll be talking about factors that affect the immune system, immune suppressing foods and toxins, as well as how to boost your immune health with nutritional intervention and lifestyle changes. So that's the program today. So moving on to the next slide, you'll see a short list of some of the factors that have been found to compromise the immune system. Firstly, a poor diet lacking in essential nutrients has been found to reduce immune health. Likewise, skipping meals on a regular basis means that the body is deprived of vital nutrients. However, right now, because we're fasting, eating regular meals isn't possible because we're not in our usual routines. But if you're the right candidate for fasting and have no medical reasons to stop you, then in fact, fasting may just boost your immune system. There's a study that was carried out at the University of Southern California where researchers reported that fasting for as little as only just 3 days could regenerate the entire immune system. The research further reported that starving the body for certain periods was found to kickstart stem cells into producing new white blood cells that are involved in fighting off infections in the body. Now, going back to healthy eating, which we can also implement during the month of Ramzan, I'd say try to concentrate on eating wholesome, unprocessed foods and eat well-balanced meals that include some protein, carbohydrates, vegetables, and fruit. At Sehri time, which is the pre-dawn meal, and when you break your fast, you can comprise 2 well-balanced meals. For example, a healthy balanced meal could be a protein smoothie prepared using mixed berries and a serving of protein powder, or you could simply just add in a couple of tablespoons of any ground nuts or seeds. That could be consumed along with some wholemeal bread or potatoes for a source of starchy carbohydrates, just to keep you energized throughout the day. Or you could perhaps prepare a vegetable-based omelette and consume that with some wholemeal bread, or just add in some leftover cooked potatoes into the actual omelette so that you get your carbs within the actual omelette. You don't have to have anything on the side. Likewise, for your iftari meal, prepare another healthy, balanced meal when you open your fast, which should include, again, protein, such as chicken, fish, or lentils, with some starchy carbohydrates in the form of rice, potatoes, or wholemeal bread, with some salad so that you get your vegetables in as well. Just avoid or limit fried foods and also sugary foods, because these foods have been shown to suppress the immune system. we often like traditional foods such as samosas and spring rolls when opening the fast, but these foods are often deep fried. So if you do want to have a little treat, then perhaps just brush the samosa or the spring roll with a little bit of oil and then grill it. So that way you'll be consuming a samosa or a spring roll in a healthier way. Now, eating healthily doesn't have to be expensive. Like in the example of preparing an omelette with leftover cooked potatoes, this actually means that you won't be wasting leftover ingredients. There's also lots of meat-free, inexpensive proteins that can be consumed as well. Protein, again, is very important for the immune system. So meat-free proteins or vegetarian sources of protein include items like lentils or dal, chickpeas, red kidney beans, black beans, and other beans. And they can all be consumed with rice and vegetables. Also, other protein sources that are meat-free include nuts and seeds such as chia seeds. However, I'd only recommend for chia seeds to be consumed in the soaked form, otherwise they end up dehydrating the body. Okay, in terms of optimizing our immunity further, getting good quality sleep at the right times and getting enough of it has also been reported to enhance the immune system. Lack of sleep as well as irregular sleep routines have both been associated with not only reduced immunity, but also with an increased risk of developing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure, as well as contributing to accelerated aging, obesity, depression, and lack of concentration. The key information to remember about sleep is that research has reported that we do our best healing while we sleep between the hours of 10 p.m. at night to 2 a.m. So I'd suggest that we all attempt to get to bed early and always remember that every minute before midnight is golden. Now, before I go into depth about stress and gut health, I'm just going to talk a little bit about underlying conditions that may have a negative impact on the immune system. Autoimmune diseases or conditions such as type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, and celiac disease are conditions in which the immune system attacks the body. So individuals with these types of conditions, as well as other types of underlying conditions where their bodies are having to work harder, should be taking extra precautions to protect themselves in general and in particular during this current global pandemic. So manage these underlying conditions under a medical doctor's guidance, whilst at the same time implementing nutritional strategies and making healthy lifestyle choices to help enhance the immune system. In individuals with underlying conditions that bring with them increased inflammation in the body, such as arthritis, a particular diet might be recommended. So in these cases, where underlying conditions lead to increased inflammation, anti-inflammatory diets are often advised. This basically means that you'd be decreasing or eliminating foods that may further increase inflammation in the body, such as gluten, dairy, and sugar. These are all inflammatory foods. As a result of following an anti-inflammatory diet, less strain would be put on the body of such individuals, and therefore allowing the body to concentrate on enhancing the immune system instead of putting all its reserves into fighting off high amounts of inflammatory responses. Now, moving on to the next slide, let's discuss stress in terms of the immune response in the body. So stress in any form affects the adrenal glands, which are the glands that release stress hormones like cortisol. So as you can see on the screen, there's a test tube labeled cortisol, and that's because cortisol levels can actually be tested in the lab. Stress causes the body to adapt, whether the stress be emotional, physical, or toxic. And I'm just going to go through the 3 different forms of stress. Emotional stress, for example, could be related to bereavement or even coronavirus anxiety. Then physical stress relates to being exhausted, overworked, or when sleep deprived. Finally, toxic stress relates to high intake of medicines, perhaps antibiotics, pollution, smoking, even secondhand smoke. Also in this list, high sugar intake and poor diet are also considered toxins to the body when you consume too much junk food, such as trans fats and artificial sweeteners. Now that I've described the main forms of stress on the body, it's important to remember that all forms of stress have been found to result in the depletion of nutrients in the body. This compromises the immune system. So the ultimate question is, how do we manage stress? Well, we can't actually eliminate stress completely from our lives. It's just a part of life. What we can do instead is strengthen our adrenal glands so that we become more resilient to stress by nourishing the body with healthy food. Also, taking supplements geared towards supporting our bodies during challenging times may also help, and this in turn should help to optimize immune health also. The nutrients depleted, particularly in times of stress, include vitamin C, which we also need for a healthy immune system, the B complex group of vitamins, magnesium, and zinc, which all rapidly decline when experiencing stress. So it would be a good idea to replenish these nutrients via healthy eating and via taking certain supplements. There's also a herbal supplement called Ashwagandha that may also help manage stress levels. And that's because this herb has been found to minimize the release of the stress hormone, cortisol. The herb ashwagandha has also been found to benefit those experiencing insomnia. And as already discussed, quality sleep has been found to benefit immune health. I'm just going to talk about normal days outside of fasting. So, on normal days when we're not fasting, keeping an eye on blood sugar balance is another great way of helping to manage stress levels. So on regular days, set a daily eating routine and consume 3 daily meals with healthy snacks in between. You may have noticed that on regular days, when you skip a meal, you get that hangry feeling irritable, not being able to concentrate, and slumps in energy levels. So this is when you know that your blood sugar levels are completely out of whack. And that basically means that you've stressed your body even further by not eating. You've raised your cortisol levels just by doing that. To help manage stress and anxiety, which may impact the immune system, adopt some other lifestyle changes also. So aside from prayer, yoga and cardiovascular exercises, such as brisk walking, have been found to decrease stress hormone levels in the body. Another underlying health issue in the form of food intolerances has also been linked with a compromised immune system. So I'll talk about this in the next slide in relation to gut health. So gut health is absolutely essential for optimum health and also immunity. Surprisingly, about 70 to 80% of our immune cells are located in the gut. If you think about it, that's a staggering amount of immune cells. Going back to food intolerances, these are known as IgG-mediated reactions that affect gut permeability. Gut permeability, otherwise known as a leaky gut, basically means that there are gaps within the cell structure of the very thin gut membrane. So where there is any level of gut permeability, undigested food particles and toxins are more likely to escape through the cell gaps within the gut membrane. And then they travel throughout the bloodstream and downregulate the immune system, suppressing it. Now you must be wondering, what affects gut permeability? Well, it can be stress-induced, consuming a poor diet consisting of a high toxic load in the form of artificial trans fats, artificial sweeteners, preservatives, and additives. It all just adds up. Some of the symptoms of food intolerances include abdominal bloating, migraines, irritable bowel syndrome, low energy, skin issues, and the development of autoimmune conditions, as we've just already discussed. So, to support a healthy gut, take probiotic supplements that help immune boosting good bacteria to flourish in the gut. Also, take collagen supplements or collagen containing foods such as chicken stock, which has been found to strengthen gut health and in turn plays a role in enhancing the immune system. Moving on, you'll see a list of items on this next slide that have been shown to suppress immunity. So on the list, we've got sugar, fried foods, processed or junk food, and interestingly, caffeinated beverages, toxins, stress, and poor sleep, as already discussed. I'll talk a little more about some of these items. So now on the next slide, we've got a teaspoon of white sugar. So white sugar or refined sugar is stripped of nutrients. So basically, it's really full of empty, unhealthy calories. Sugar actually has been found to deplete nutrients in the body. Processed sugar is not only found in obvious types of foods like cakes and biscuits and sweets, but interestingly, sugar may be hidden in other foods such as cereals, yogurt, granola, sports drinks, salad dressings, pasta sauce, and condiments like tomato ketchup. So the sugar really adds up, and because it's having a huge impact on the immune system, it's important to monitor the amount that you're consuming. I suggest that if you really want to eat a sweet treat, then prepare a dessert at home using sugar alternatives which are better for you, healthier for you. For example, instead of using white sugar, try using xylitol or coconut sugar, maple syrup, or yacon syrup. Now I'm just going to briefly say something about fried and processed foods. They have actually been found to suppress the immune system, so it would be best to limit or avoid these foods as much as you can. There are, however, alternatives for frying anyway, such as using an air fryer. An air fryer can be used as a healthy alternative to air fry lots of different foods, like spring rolls and even chicken. Interestingly, high amounts of caffeine has been associated with dampening down the immune system, as have various toxins. So in terms of caffeinated beverages, I'm talking about high consumption of tea and coffee. Toxins include nicotine from cigarettes, even if it's secondhand smoke. Air pollution is another toxin that we can inhale, and a high intake of medicines such as antibiotics that have been found to also affect immune health. Trans fats, otherwise known as artificial fats, found in margarine, for example, and artificial sweeteners are also classed as toxins as they are not natural, and they also have a negative impact on immune health. Finally, on a more positive note, let's move onto this last slide. I've just listed some items that have been found to boost immunity. So first of all, we have fruit that is rich in antioxidants. Just make sure to take off the skin on fruit, the fruit that is non-organic, because most of the harmful pesticides on non-organic fruit and vegetables are on the skin. Now moving on to vegetables, consume these both raw and also lightly cooked, because different nutrients get released when certain vegetables, such as carrots, are lightly cooked. Just remember not to overcook vegetables, or you'll end up losing a lot of the nutrients. In terms of immunity, garlic, ginger, and onions are very rich in immune boosting properties. So, for example, if you're using garlic within a recipe, you could blitz it up inside of the juice to create a ginger shot. That's an easy recipe. Or perhaps try preparing a honey bomb where you could grate some ginger into some honey and even add in some fresh turmeric, which also has immune boosting properties. Add in some black pepper, and you can just mix that all up into a honey and store that in the fridge. Take out a teaspoon each time you feel like a warm drink. That's would be a nice idea. Right, superfoods. So these days, sometimes it's difficult to get a hold of a good quality vitamin C. So there's two main superfoods that I particularly like, such as baobab and camu camu. So these are powders which you can incorporate into smoothies, into juice, and they're very rich in vitamin C. So I'd recommend those to help boost the immune system. Then moving on to supplements, of course, vitamin C is very essential to help boost the immune system, although I would recommend a slow releasing formula or a timed released formula of vitamin C, because vitamin C is a water soluble vitamin and comes out of your body very fast. So it'd probably be best to go for a timed release or slow releasing vitamin C formula. Regarding vitamin D, there's lots of research about vitamin D and immunity. The daily dosage, the daily maintenance dosage for vitamin D is 2000 IU daily. If you have a deficiency, then you would need to take more. Zinc is also another mineral which is very rich, which is very important for the immune system and also for stress as well, actually. And then probiotics, which we've discussed, to help the gut-friendly bacteria to flourish, which helps enhance our immunity. So with probiotics, you could go for a dairy-free probiotic if somebody has, for example, a dairy intolerance or allergy. So there's two different options available. Moving on to herbs, echinacea and olive leaf extract are amazing for immunity. There's lots of research about echinacea and even olive leaf extract. So I'd give these a go. You can find these in tincture forms, and these are actually very good as well, alongside supplements and healthy eating, alongside exercise. So give all these things a go, and hopefully your immune system should improve. Thank you for listening, and I hope that the webinar was useful for you. Now let's move on to some questions.
Jazakallah Salma, a very detailed and informative webinar and very pertinent to the world we're living in today. Now we have some questions. We do have a number of questions that participants have posted. If you would be so kind to answer them. Question 1, Can we boost our intake of vitamin C and vitamin D through diet instead of using supplements?
Yes, of course, you can do that. So there's lots of vitamin C rich fruits and vegetables, for example, kiwis and the superfoods that I mentioned. So they're not actually supplements; they're completely natural. So you could actually do that. Vitamin D, you can find that in eggs as well. So eating more eggs. Butter contains vitamin D as well. So, but it's just if somebody has a deficiency, then I'd recommend a supplement because you can only eat so many eggs which contain vitamin D, and you can't really sit in the sun for that long. And if you have to sit in the sun for a very long time to get a sufficient amount of vitamin D. So I would recommend supplements for vitamin D if you have a deficiency. Otherwise, if you want to maintain your vitamin D status, eat eggs, and you could do that, but I would suggest a vitamin D supplement as well. Vitamin C can quite easily be consumed from fruit and vegetables, however.
Okay, Jazakallah. The next question, where can we buy fresh turmeric from?
There's a lot of shops, actually. We're quite lucky in this country. There's a lot of Oriental shops, a lot of Asian shops where you could just walk in and pick up some, I won't give any names right now of actual shops, but I do know locally to me as well, there's a lot of places, even actually the main big grocery stores as well. I've seen fresh turmeric there as well, so we shouldn't have a problem purchasing turmeric. It's just that prices, there's a price difference. So if you walk into a big grocery store, you'll only be able to get a little bit for quite an expensive price maybe, but then if you walk into an Asian store, you can pick up quite a lot, and it's quite cheap actually.
Okay, Jazakallah. So the next question is regarding vitamin supplements, and the question is what supplements do you recommend? What kind of brand? So supermarket supplements, would they do the job?
I wouldn't recommend high street brands. I'd recommend going for companies that have a lot of research behind them. So going into a good health shop, not a high street health shop or a high street brand. I would never recommend a high street brand because high street brands are often just maintenance dosages, and there's not enough research backed up by them. So that's why high street brands are often a lot cheaper. So I think it depends on the unique case. So there's different multivitamins that a person can take, omega-3 supplements. I always recommend an omega-3 supplement that is purified completely and doesn't contain any lead, mercury. So it's important always to go for a good quality company. Yeah, so high street brands I would definitely not recommend, but go into a good quality health shop or go online or ask a practitioner, depending on your individual case. I won't go into brands, but if somebody wants to talk to me one-to-one, then I can discuss brands then.
Next question, where can I get allergy tests from?
So I use a company which is practitioner-based, and for food intolerances, it's a finger prick test. There are some other tests where, for example, for the stress test, there was a picture of a test tube labeled cortisol. So cortisol can be measured via saliva. So if somebody wants to go for an adrenal stress test, you would need to collect 4 samples of your saliva on an average day. With the food intolerance test, it would be a finger prick test. And there's other tests where, you can use stool, urine, or plasma.
Jazakallah. Next question, how much meat should we eat in a week?
I think it's just about the quality of meat as well. I mean, I think it's important maybe to have just one day at least or one meal or a few meals in a week where you're not actually consuming meat constantly. So just I think it's about balance, definitely about balance, eating in moderation. You can mix and match the meat-based proteins and the non-meat-based proteins. So one day maybe having rice and lentils, or beans and lentils, beans and rice, and then another day having a chicken roast. But obviously we can reassess our own, we should just be listening to our own bodies, what our own bodies need. So sometimes, you know, as women, maybe you might be craving iron, and there's a reason for that. So you just got to like listen to your own body. The days when you really need meat, then obviously eat it, but then you can mix and match meat with lentils, with beans and other protein sources. Even for snacks, you could just, you know, eat seeds and nuts. They're protein sources as well.
Okay, Jazakallah. You may have answered this question. Can you recommend some healthy snacks for children?
Yeah, rice cakes or oat cakes with hummus on top. So you'll be getting your protein plus a little bit of carb as well, because children do need carbs because they're running around everywhere. Even healthy snack bars. Just be careful to look at the ingredients. So there's a lot of there's a lot of snack bars that contain a lot of sugar, but then I found quite a few, even in like budget-friendly stores as well, where, you know, they just contain maybe seeds and dates and that's it. So just take a look at the ingredients at the back, and when choosing healthy snack bars, not just for children but for adults as well, make sure you go for a 1:4 protein to carbohydrate ratio. So that way you won't be spiking your insulin levels so much. So for example, say the protein was 1 gram, make sure that the carbohydrate isn't more than 4 grams, for example.
Okay, Jazakallah. Next question. What are good foods to lower high blood pressure naturally?
There's a lot of research about beetroot juice, but then if somebody has blood sugar issues, then I wouldn't recommend beetroot juice so heavily. Beetroot juice is actually very sugary anyway, so I wouldn't recommend it on an empty stomach, but otherwise beetroot juice has been found to actually help to lower blood pressure, as has hibiscus tea and coconut water as well, and in general just weight loss, exercise and eating a generally healthy diet as well.
Okay, Jazakallah. How can we stop feeling bloated after eating?
I think especially these days when we're fasting as well, we tend to eat everything all at once. So you've got the water going in as well because we're thirsty as well. We've been thirsty all day, and then, you know, you might be having your main meal and mixing in perhaps like some fried foods and then a big bowl of a fruit salad perhaps. So that whole combination really makes you bloat a lot. I mean, it's a different matter if somebody has a food intolerance and you're not really eating that much, but you're still bloating. But these days, because of the fasting period, there is a temptation to overeat. So I would suggest just eating slowly. Eat a little bit, then take a little break, and then eat a little bit more.
Jazakallah. So the question is, you have spoken about an anti-inflammatory diet. Can you recommend some meals we can cook?
Yeah, so anti-inflammatory basically means you won't be eating gluten, dairy, sugar, even fried foods, because all of these foods contribute to inflammation in the body. So it's quite easy, you know, going gluten-free, dairy-free. There's lots of dairy-free options out there, like you can purchase coconut yogurt, soya yogurt, there's even coconut-based ice creams, cashew nut ice creams. For a main meal, for example, you could have some buckwheat noodles or have some rice with or some potatoes with a piece of chicken or fish or beans and a big salad or a stir fry.
Okay, Jazakallah. So next question is about the recommended amount of water. So the government guidelines recommend 2 liters of water. Is that also what you recommend?
Yeah, that's also what I recommend, 2 liters, but sometimes depending on the weather, it might be really warm or we're exercising a lot more, then you might need a little bit more. But don't go overboard. Obviously, just listen to your body, what you need. Just drink that amount, but obviously try and stick to the 2 liters. If you need a little bit more, then have a little bit more.
Okay. The next question is about acne. So my daughter is 21 years old and she's suffering from spots. What is the reason for this and what food do you recommend?
Well, everybody's an individual, so it might be that she's eating a lot of like processed junk food and her diet isn't clean enough, or it could be hormone related, or it could even be food intolerance related. So according to research, dairy is a trigger for acne, and it's quite common. So perhaps maybe if that's the case, it just depends on the individual. If somebody's having eating a lot of milk-based products, maybe try and eliminate them and just try and clean up the diet, eating more healthy foods. Check ingredients before you consume foods. For example, if you're eating, like I mentioned, a snack bar or a cereal or a granola, just make sure there's not a lot of sugar, or just make sure it's completely free of sugar. There's lots of different companies out there now. We're quite lucky in this country that we've got a lot of different brands coming in all the time, a lot of healthy brands, and a lot of these cereals are often like they don't even contain sugar in them anymore. So there's quite a few different varieties that you can try.
Jazakallah. The next question is, how much is a healthy portion of food to get your daily intake of iron?
It just depends. Somebody might have a deficiency in iron, and if they have a deficiency, then they might actually need to take a supplement alongside eating iron-based foods. But in general, in iron you can get from red meat, but also chickpeas are a good source of iron as well, and so are greens, and even these green powders which you can add into juices and smoothies like wheatgrass, barley grass. So it just depends on your individual need. Women generally need more iron, men don't need as much. And well, they do need iron, but not as much as women. Women during certain periods of the month, they might need more iron. So at that time, you might want to just up your iron intake. And then at other times, you might not need so much iron.
Jazakallah. So the next question is on IBS. My daughter has IBS and is suffering greatly. What foods are good for her?
For a person with IBS, I would usually recommend an anti-inflammatory diet and also a food intolerance test, because then that way you can eliminate any more sensitivities. So for somebody with IBS, just I guess try and eat clean again. Eliminate as much gluten and dairy as you can, because that might be beneficial. Write a food diary, because it could even be a simple kind of even a healthy food that people might react to. For example, somebody might react to a pear, even though a pear is healthy. So I think writing a food diary would be important, and then that way you can work out what your food triggers are.
Jazakallah. Next question. What can we replace coffee and tea with?
Matcha green tea. It does contain caffeine, but the caffeine in matcha green tea is released slowly as opposed to coffee and tea, because the caffeine in coffee and tea is rapidly released and then it rapidly declines and you get a slump in energy. So it's just a vicious cycle. But apart from that, herbal teas, chamomile tea, hibiscus tea is very, very good. As the weather is getting warmer as well, you want to try and cool your body down. Hibiscus has a naturally cooling effect. It's naturally sweet. And fresh juices, but just don't have them on an empty stomach, because then you'll get a sugar spike. And protein smoothies maybe in the middle of the day as a snack if you want.
Jazakallah. So there's 2 questions regarding honey. So if I read them both, is honey a good replacement for sugar? And then is xylitol and honey good for diabetics?
Honey is a better alternative than sugar, definitely, especially if it's raw honey, fresh honey. So that's much better. In terms of diabetes, xylitol is much better, because xylitol has a lower impact on insulin levels.
Jazakallah. Next question, should we cook with butter instead of vegetable oil?
Well, there are other oils as well that you could cook with. Vegetable oil in terms of rapeseed oil is quite good actually. Rapeseed oil, you could cook with rapeseed oil or coconut butter, or avocado oil is amazing. I've cooked with avocado oil quite a lot, and it's a nice oil to cook with. It's a healthy oil. Sometimes you don't even need oil. For example, if you're making mince, there's natural fat coming out of the mince. So I've cooked mince many times without even a drop of oil. You don't really need oil in there. So just try and minimize the oil. And for example, if you're using extra virgin olive oil or olive oil, which is very nutritious, you could just top that on top of your fruit after cooking so that you don't destroy any of its health benefits.
Jazakallah. The next question is about cinnamon tea and whether it's if we can use the bark or whether we should use the powder in our cinnamon tea. Which one's better?
It doesn't really make a difference actually, but when you use the bark, you have to sort of cook the bark in the water for a bit so that you really release some of the properties. You could actually do it either way, whichever way is more practical for you.
Okay. Next question is to do with Ramadan. Is it okay to use Ruh Afza daily?
Ruh Afza is very sugary, so I wouldn't actually use that. I'm not really a Ruh Afza person, and if you do want it as an occasional treat, just maybe once a week because it's Ramzan, but maybe just put in less Ruh Afza as opposed to putting in a lot more.
Okay. Sorry, Salma, we still have a few more questions. The next question is, my toddler has chronic constipation, which gets slightly better by eliminating dairy. What else can be the cause of it?
Probably best to go to a doctor and double check, because with children it's a sensitive case. Although gluten, it might even be something to do with gluten, wheat, because the top allergens actually, which I've noticed this, and according to research as well, the top allergens include dairy, yes, number one, gluten, including wheat, eggs. Eggs are also a top allergen, and sometimes some forms of seafood. So again, I'd say keep a food diary and just maybe you might be able to pinpoint what's causing the issue just by keeping that food diary, and later on perhaps go for a test.
Okay, Jazakallah. So the next question is, why do we have so much hair loss nowadays? Is it food related?
It can be stress related. It can be because your cortisol levels suddenly kind of increase rapidly, and that can contribute to a vicious cycle in the body, causing hair loss. Also, it can be due to iron deficiencies, or just basically various nutrients might be missing in your diet. So, or could even be related to a food intolerance as well, actually, because as per that diagram that I was discussing earlier on, it's like a fabric where your gut is such a thin membrane, and it's like a fabric, a very thin fabric. It can easily get damaged. So you develop these like holes in the gut sometimes if you're very stressed, or you've had some pressure on the body. Like some people might have a few intolerances, some people might have a lot. It's very common actually, and through those gaps you're losing nutrients, and that perhaps could contribute to hair loss as well as accelerated aging and all those other symptoms that I discussed. So in terms of hair loss, I just recommend healthy eating, maybe go for a test later on, supplements, a good quality multivitamin that's rich in B vitamins as well, zinc and selenium, magnesium. All of these things are important for hair structure and hair strength. And just try to minimize stress, because that's another factor that is involved in hair loss as well.
Jazakallah. The next question is, are there any food recommendations for people who have arthritis?
Yeah, as I was discussing before, I'd suggest an anti-inflammatory diet, reducing or avoiding gluten and dairy and sugar, fried foods, and perhaps even going for an intolerance test, to be quite honest, because you can then pinpoint other foods that are aggravating the inflammation even further. So, and just go eat and consume anti-inflammatory foods. Ginger's anti-inflammatory if it suits the body, turmeric, and eating meals on time, because the moment you skip on a normal day, I know we're in the fasting month, and there's lots of benefits to fasting as well. As I discussed, it boosts the immune system according to research. But on normal days, because this is just a temporary kind of phase that we're in, but when we're in regular days throughout the year, just try and eat all of your meals on time, because otherwise you're stressing your body, and that stress is actually contributing to even more inflammation in the body. So I would just make sure that you eat your meals regularly, have snacks in between, eating every 3 to 4 hours with a little bit of protein each time. That could be like, some nuts with a little bit of fruit, and just keep it simple and clean.
Jazakallah. We're going to have 2 more questions, Salma. So this question is, I get a lethargic feeling after work due to COVID-19 stress. What should I take to help myself?
If it suits you, I found a lot of success with using ashwagandha, because it minimizes the release of the stress hormone cortisol. So that's quite a nice herb to take. And apart from that, obviously not during the month of Ramadan when you're fasting, but on the days when you're not, and afterwards, just make sure you eat on time, you sleep on time, just try and make your body more resilient. So I was discussing the adrenal glands before. So the adrenal glands are where the stress hormones are released from. So I think the key thing to remember is try to strengthen the adrenal glands, so that when you do feel stress, because that's inevitable to feel stress. So when you do feel stress, you won't feel as stressed as you normally would if your body was weakened. So strengthen your body so that your adrenal glands get stronger, and that when you do face stress, which we currently are in different ways, we're worried about our loved ones, etc., traveling when we leave the house. So just try and make your adrenal glands stronger, so that you become more resilient to stress, and in turn your immune system will naturally become stronger as well, because you'll be minimizing that stress, which impacts the immune system. So that should be really helpful if you try to think of it in that way.
Jazakallah. And the last question for today is, what is your view on eating fruits after meals? For example, eating an orange straight after lunch?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to gulp it down like straight away, in the sense that, you don't take a breath. Just, I'd recommend eating slowly, but you can actually perhaps eat a tangerine, a little bit of fruit after you do eat a main meal. But the issue lies when you consume a bigger bowl of fruit. You've just eaten and you've got all of those proteins and carbohydrates running around your bloodstream, and then you're eating a massive bowl of fruit, and that's when you start to feel heavy and all the foods are mixing up. So if you're just eating like a tangerine or something small, like a little bit of fruit, is fine if your body can handle it. Everybody is different. Every body is individual. Everyone is individual. So if you want to eat a larger amount of fruit, then take a little bit of a break, then eat the fruit, but then don't eat it completely on an empty stomach, because then it's just a release of sugar, because fruit does contain sugar even though it is natural. So just have some nuts on the side, like unsalted almonds or cashews, and have them at the same time as the fruit. Or otherwise, you could even mix up a cashew nut cream, which is quite easy to make. You just get some cashews with some water, blitz it up in a blender, just a little bit of water. It turns into a protein-rich cream, and it's quite tasty actually. You can just pour that over fruit, so you don't even have to eat the nuts on the side. You've got like a protein cream on top of your fruit, so you can give that a go.
Jazakallah, Salma. So I think that's all our questions for now. Jazakallah again, very for answering all our questions, and there's so much information that you've given our ladies. Now this webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out the link. It will be posted on our website as well, but we will be posting the link to Southers and to our health and fitness secretaries as well. So I'm sure that we will be using this webinar and taking advantage of all the information you've given us. So Jazakallah, Salma.
Barakallah.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone.